What is up, everybody? I am so stoked. I am here with Chris Bell, Mark Bell, the brothers Bell, the founders of Jacked and Tan, rulers of the internet universe. It is awesome to have them here, and I'm so stoked to spend the next hour or so chatting with them about their lives, their morning routines, what they do to be so incredibly jacked and tan and awesome all the time, and their experiences with the carnivore diet and many other things. So guys, I'm so eternally grateful. Thanks for being here. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you. Don't forget, in your mission to be jacked and tan, that being tan is 50% of
it. Well, I'm moving to San Diego, so that is going to get me halfway there.
That sounds perfect.
Have you ever been hit by the second wave? Because that's what happened to me this morning.
I don't think he knows about the second wave.
Second wave? Are we talking about poop?
Yeah, we're talking about poop. Yeah, so I got everything out before I left the house this morning, and I was like, oh, we're good. My body told me we're good. My brain told me we were good. And then I'm in the car, and I'm like, oh, no, the second wave. And as at the gym, I got hit hard by that second wave.
What did everything come out okay? I hope there was no.
Oh, yeah, everything was good. I don't have any problems with that ever, really. Do you have any problems with that when you eat meat or anything?
Not the only time I ever have a problem is if I go off the diet. So when I do have, some carbs here and there, some sweet potatoes or some things like that, then the bathroom situation's a little different.
Gets to be rough.
And also I've been having a lot. He just brought me coffee and it's sitting here, so I'm starting drinking it. And I want to talk to you about coffee.
Oh, I
think
forgot.
I've been having,
you want to have less coffee.
Yeah, I think it's all these polyphenols and stuff killing my stomach. And then I was thinking it was the dairy, but I actually fare pretty well on dairy. I think maybe the coffee, so I might have to push this aside a little bit. I'm having steps here and there.
Well, we can definitely talk about coffee. I think that's something that everybody's is dying to hear about after I teased it on Ben Greenfield and I refused his key on coffee. I appreciate what he's doing by trying to make clean coffee, but one of the things that I'm concerned about with coffee is this idea that if you look at some of the polyphenols in coffee, specifically caffeic acid and chlorogenic acid, there are some interesting studies from the 80s and 90s that I'm going to start talking about on my Instagram where those polyphenols have been shown to induce chromosomal breaks. And so it's like, wait a minute. We just need to hold the phone here a little bit and realize that coffee is a $20 billion industry and that a lot of the studies on coffee are funded by the coffee industry, which is okay. We just need to make sure that we're seeing all sides of the issues. So
do you think that maybe I'm seeing this problem come forward more because I've eliminated everything else from my diet, and that maybe a lot of people aren't feeling the effects of the negative effects that coffee may have because it's mixed in with so many other things? Or, because all of a sudden I've been feeling stomach distress and things from coffee, but I think it's in the absence of everything else that might have been blocking that, but doing other bad things too.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about a carnivore diet or any type of elimination diet is you can separate the signal from the noise. We talk about that a lot in medicine and statistical studies. Sometimes it's hard to separate signal from noise for people. And when you really simplify the diet and do what I think you guys would agree is a very ancestrally, evolutionarily consistent diet, you can start to see the signal. You can separate the signal from the noise and you can say, oh, that one thing that I'm doing kind of messes me up, or that one thing that I'm doing makes my stomach feel weird. And that's why it's such a powerful tool. I mean, that's self-experimentation, which is how we really get to be that's how we get to be our optimal selves, I think, is by doing this iterative process of self-experimentation. So, well, let's start with this. I think everybody listening to this knows you guys, but I would love for each of you to take a few minutes and tell us just your story in a nutshell. We can start with you, Mark, if you want. I see your stuff on Instagram. I've never met you in person. I've met Chris in person, but I'm going to be down there in Sacramento in June. We're going to hang out. We're going to lift. You're going to crush me and break me in half, but I'm going to try my best. But let's just tell people a little bit about your story. I mean, it's a pretty incredible story, man. From what I can tell, you had a very different life a few years ago, and now it's just, how did that happen, my friend?
I started lifting weights at about 11 years old, 12 years old, something like that. Our oldest brother, Mad Dog, my dad bought him a workout thing from Sears.
It was a Marcy weight set back. That was the brand. Marcy.
Yeah, so it was like
a universal machine.
Yeah, it was a machine. You could do lat pull downs on one side, bench press on the other, and do leg extensions. And I think it had some options to switch things out, so you could do some stuff on there. So I would mess around with that machine, but like I didn't really know what I was doing. Kind of monkey see, monkey do. And I saw them working out on it, and so I would mess around with that on occasion. And then Chris had some knee issues growing up, kind of just born bow-legged, and played football and stuff, and ended up in a lot of pain. And I was trying to figure out how to get out of pain. And so I think you had knee surgeries, right?
Yeah, double knee surgery at 16.
Wow.
Yeah, a bunch of bone chips and Asha Schlasha or whatever they call it. You know,
Osgood Slaughter.
yeah. All that kind of good stuff.
Sounds like you're drunk when you say that word, right?
It does, man. It does.
So I had that done at a very young age at 16. And then I started squatting from the advice of my school strength coach, who was also a chiropractor, to sort of get back in the game. And our dad bought us a squat rack. And then I'm going to let Mark tell the story. But basically, my dad is so awesome that he had an income tax business in our basement, because in New York, upstate New York especially, everybody has a basement. And it's always like finished off. And they usually have like a family room down there. That's where the kids go down and beat the shit out of each other or something like that. That's what we used to do. But my dad turned our basement into like one half was an income tax office and the other half was a gym. So my dad bought us a squat rack and put it in there. And he was like, hey, if they're going to stay out of trouble doing this, I'm going to support it.
Yeah. So I saw, entrepreneurship and lifting running side by side, literally, because my dad had his tax practice down in our basement. And I would work out and then I would go talk to my dad, sometimes in between sets or sometimes when I was done working out. And he'd say, hey, I made $60 off of this guy and $100 off of this guy. And a lot of times he was also making money pretty quickly and conveniently, because he didn't have to see every single person that he did taxes for. And I thought that was amazing. That kind of made my mind kind of wander and made me think like, man, that's really cool. He has this kind of setup where he's able to, make some money, sometimes working on something for 30 minutes, but he gets paid for like 2 hours worth of work. And then the other thing that was cool is he made money off of like everybody that we knew. He made money off of family. He made money off of friends. And when there was a condition, where someone couldn't pay or something, obviously he wouldn't take money from them. But I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, he kind of makes money off of everybody that he's in contact with. And so with the weights that we had a great setup. We had a great like squat rack, and we had Olympic weights, and we had a good bench press and a bunch of stuff like that. And I just got so attached to it from the beginning because I was already lifting for a little bit. And when my friends would come over and they would work out with me, I would be able to smoke them. So I felt really good about it. I had a good initial relationship with lifting weights. And then my cousin came over one day, and my brother Chris, he said, Smelly benches like 205. And my cousin was like, there's no way he benches 205. He's like 12 years old. He's like, I don't even bench that. And my cousin was older than me. And so we kept loading up the weight and loading up the weight. We got to 205. I hit that. And then we got to 215 and 225 and 235. And I think we ended up around 240 or 245. And my cousin was just kind of baffled. He's like, I don't know what that means, but he's like, that's probably going to turn into something one day. And, here we are, some 25 or 30 years later. I just have been obsessed with lifting, and I've been obsessed with trying to figure out how can I be the strongest? And it was always at any cost. It didn't matter if I needed to get bigger. It didn't matter if I needed to work on speed training, or if I needed to do box jumps with weights in my hands, or if I needed to take anabolic steroids, or if I needed to weigh 330 pounds. It really just didn't matter to me what the obstacle was. I was like, well, that's the way you get stronger. That's the way for me. Like, I'm going to lean towards that. And so that's what I did. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And eventually I ended up at a point where I was just getting fatter and not necessarily any stronger. And so I wanted to do something about that. And that's when I started to implement more diet stuff. But my brother and I have been messing around with keto style diets since kind of like the mid 90s. But in addition to all that, I got hurt a lot of times along the way as well. And I tore my pec several times, tore a tricep, tore a bicep, tore a hamstring, obviously hurt my back a million times, just like anybody else that lifts heavy. And so, when I tore my pec for the second time, I wanted to try to come up with something that was going to allow me to train through and around injuries. And that's when I started kind of tinkering around with the concept of a slingshot. It took a few years to get it going. But, anybody that has an idea, understand that the idea, it will grow stronger, and that's how you know how to act on it. So some people just think that you're just going to get an idea and you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to just make it. I've talked to you a few times about a few ideas, but the more that you say it out loud and the more that it sounds convincing to you, the stronger and stronger it will get. So my idea nearly died a couple of times, but it was able to stay afloat by me kind of talking about it, me trying to figure out ways of making it. And then ultimately our brother died, our brother Mike, he passed away. And when that happened, I was trying to think of a way to kind of keep his spirit alive in some way. And I was like, my brother, he took no shit from nobody. And he would fight people. I mean, he'd get into fist fights and stuff like that. And so I was like, a great way to honor him is for me to keep a chunk of him on the inside of me and kind of see things through, fight for stuff that you believe in. Don't take shit from people, because before that time I was very reserved. I was super quiet. And I just allowed people to plow me over. Even though I was big and strong, I just let it, roll off my back, And so I was already told that the slingshot was a bad idea by several companies. And I was like, fuck that. That's no way to live. Life's short. I need to see this thing through. And then I just, a great way to get an idea rolling is to think about the resources that you have in your corner. Think about the people that you have around you. And I knew ultimately that I was the only one that was going to be able to actually make it, because nobody knew what I was talking about, because there's never been a product really like it. So that made it difficult. But I went to my wife and I shared the idea with her. I talked to my dad, and basically we took some knee wraps and wrist wraps and configured them in a way that I could show one of my wife's friends how to sew it. She sewed it up, and kind of the rest is history from there.
That's so cool.
You do have an amazing story. He does have an amazing story that I like when he shares, because it always gives me goosebumps when he says it. You knew that the slingshot, basically you put it on, it helps you bench press more weight without getting hurt. You slide your arms into it, right?
So elastic band type thing, yeah.
You tell that story where the lady sewed it for you, and then you went to meet her at Starbucks. Can you tell that?
Yeah. So my wife is a swimmer. She was a Division I swimmer for the University of Kansas. She's an ass kicker, and she still swims every morning at about 5 a.m. And so while I was trying to make this product, I'm like, I don't know anybody that can really sew anything. I certainly don't know how to do that. And the material I was working with was very thick. And so I'm like, someone's going to have to hand sew this thing, I think. I don't even know. And so I asked around. I started asking as many people as I could. Hey, someone that can sew, this kind of thing together. And a bunch of people didn't really know. And then I talked to my wife about it, and she said, oh, my friend Marilyn, she makes our swimsuits, and she could probably help you with it, or at least point you in the right direction. And so I met with her at a Starbucks in Woodland, California, and I communicated with her what I was looking for. She's like, oh yeah, I could do that. That's pretty easy. And then I said, hey, could you put maybe swimsuit material over top of it, because I don't want people to know what this is, because what I was using at the time was another company's knee wraps. And so I didn't want everybody to kind of see what it looked like underneath, basically trying to cover up the material. And she said, yeah, that's not a problem. So I met her there the following week, and she had a prototype of the slingshot. And I said, can you stay right here for a second? Because I got to try this thing out. Right next to the Starbucks was a Fitness 19. I just walked into that place like I owned it, like I always do. Whenever you don't have a gym membership, you just pretend you belong there. Blew past the guy at the front desk and put 135 pounds in the bar. Did a few reps with it and just got up off the bench, just head to toe goosebumps. I'm like, this is it. This is the thing that has been locked in my brain for so long. This is like a lottery ticket. Now I need to figure out how to cash this thing in. And so from that point, it was just a matter of trying to find manufacturing and things like that, which ended up being probably the easiest part of the whole thing. That part wasn't that difficult.
That's such a cool story. I love it. I just love this concept that sometimes you get this idea and it's just in your gut, it's just in you.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's your experience with finding the carnivore diet. It must have been finding that gem where you're like, I can dig into this.
That's exactly what I was thinking as Mark was telling that story. And what's interesting is that the idea has grown and progressed for me. You know, as you guys know, I've been interested in the carnivore diet for about a year, 8 months now, and it's just been deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And it's been such a cool experience for me. And when I first started experiencing it, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, but maybe I need to learn more about these things. In the last, 8 months or so, I've just been this incredible tumble, down the rabbit hole. And at this point, it feels the same way. It's like, oh, this is a gem. This is something really cool that people need to know about.
Can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
Think
I
about
can't.
it. Not
So I wanted to ask you, this is actually awesome that we get to talk to you because recently, like as in like the last few days on the internet, there's been a blowback of kind of like what you're doing, like the nose to tail eating.
Right.
There's been a lot of people saying like, look at all these other people. They don't need it. They're just eating muscle meat. My theory is that you're trying to find something more optimal. You're trying to find like the absolute best thing. And then you have a bunch of people like kind of shunning you before it's even developed or done, which I don't agree with. I do agree with, like, people want to say, hey, I don't eat liver. That's fine. Say it. But like, I don't think that there's a reason to put one down over the other. I think like we need to keep going. We need to build out this community. We need to figure it out. And we need to like all kind of be together saying like, hey, if you want to eat muscle meat, that's fine. But here's the reasons why you might want to add some other things in. I feel like you're going for optimization. Is that correct?
Totally. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's exactly the way I see it. I mean, there are examples of people in the carnivore community who appear to be thriving on just muscle meat. And I think that's amazing. But the way that my brain works, and this is probably why, I was a PA and then I went back to medical school and, I'm obsessive, it's a foible, but it's also an asset of mine. And so when I get my claws into something, whether it's surfing or jujitsu or the carnivore diet or medicine, you better believe, just like Mark's story, I feel like a lot of kinship with you guys. Like, I'm not letting this go. I'm going to understand this at the deepest level. And I think that, not everybody wants to understand at that level. And maybe not everybody's going to find value at that deep level. I think that, I was kind of shocking with Sean Baker, who's a really great friend of mine the other day. And I think that what we're discovering is that there's probably, levels of interest and levels of depth with which people can approach the diet. I think that, like Sean is saying, there's a lot of value in just a basic introductory diet that you can tell someone in 6 words: eat.
Yeah, elevator pitch. That's what me and Mark call it.
Yeah, just eat animals, man. Just eat animals. Eat whatever you want. Just eat animals. Yeah. Stop eating plants, right? And I'm starting to see myself as the guy who's like, I'm kind of like the nerd in the back of the shop going like, I'm tinkering and I'm like, what about calcium phosphorus balance? And what about salmon roe? And what about phospholipid DHA? What's that?
I said, people are like, shut up.
I know. People are like, shut up. We just want to eat fucking ribeyes. And it's like, okay, great. Go eat your goddamn ribeyes. But I'm still going to be the guy in the back of the shop, going, well, we need to think about this and that. And, I'm a doctor. So what's that?
It's the only way we can move forward.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is that I just want to push the field forward. I just want to offer things to people. People should do whatever works for them, whatever makes them feel the best. But I'm a physician and Sean is too. And so I think it's interesting that he and I will continue to kind of partner and share the process of, being in the movement as physicians and thinking about it from a physiologic perspective. I love blood work. I love biochemistry. I love physiology. And Sean helps me think about it from the perspective of like a little bit more of a simplistic perspective or a little bit more of a distilled perspective. And I think there's room for both. And, I just posted on Instagram this morning a picture of my breakfast and I was like, this is incredibly nutrient dense. And, there was a post on Instagram the other day. Somebody was saying, hey, I feel like this is becoming a nutrient density contest. In the back of my mind, I thought, why is that a bad thing? Yeah. Like, I feel like the more nutrient dense you can make your food, that's great. Even if you just start with a ribeye steak, that's more nutrient dense than almost any other food I can imagine on the planet. But if you want to add salmon roe, if you want to add egg yolks, if you want to do bone marrow, if you want to do raw liver, then I think you're just going to feel better. And you know what? Like, people can experiment. I just want to offer it. And like you said, I just want to push the field forward and, continue the conversation, because for me, the conversation does not end at, let's just eat ribeyes, and if that makes people feel good, then awesome. But if people want to go a little further and they want to understand it, or they want to, go a little deeper, then that's where hopefully I can offer something to the community. And also, I think that by going deeper, I hope that I can be someone that helps to share the movement with people outside of the community and can talk to things, because that's one of the criticisms that people have of the carnivore diet is, aren't you going to get nutrient deficiencies? And so part of my little mad scientist tinkering in the back lab is like, well, let's think about it. What could we get deficient in this? Do we see it clinically? Am I deficient in this? No, I'm not. Where am I getting this nutrient? Do the nutrient levels even apply to somebody on a carnivore diet? I think they do to somewhat of an extent, but it's different. So yeah, I think it's a great conversation. And in general, I think yeah.
Two major parts where I think people that are nutrient dense, which people forget about all the time, especially people that diet and people that are in the fitness industry, is fat and protein. It's kind of interesting because we're always thinking about, vitamin A and vitamin C and potassium and these different micronutrients, but the macronutrients are also very, very critical. And I think, I know so many guys that are probably around 200 pounds and they're all on the same diet. I can tell them their diet without them saying anything to me. I'm like, okay, I know you're on 60 grams of fat a day. You probably eat about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. The rest is carbohydrates. You probably do, if it fits your macros. I see this everywhere. I see it literally everywhere. And everybody I know that follows that protocol looks exactly the same as they did 4 years ago. Where I'm seeing guys like you and guys like Sean Baker, your bodies are changing rapidly. And Sean's 52 years old or something, right? I mean,
that's great.
He's killing it. When he first started talking about carnivore, maybe about when I started seeing some of his stuff, I was like, I don't know if I want to be built like that guy. But now he's in amazing shape. And I'm like, shit, that's awesome. He's 10 years older than I am. And he's kicking ass. And he, does the rows and the explosive movements. He lifts like a savage too. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, it's cool to see. I mean, I think that, I feel like I've gotten stronger. I want to hear your experiences with carnivore diet, and I'd be curious to see how you guys are experimenting with nose to tail and stuff. But I feel like I'm getting stronger, and my performance hasn't suffered at all. I'm not necessarily genetically or functionally looking to get to be as big as Sean or you guys, because I still need to be able to choke people and hit the punching bag and stuff.
If you guys need a testimonial in the strength department, I'm actually coming up on my 5 years of sobriety, which I'm very proud of. Haven't drank alcohol or taken prescription painkillers or any prescription drugs really in the past 5 years, which has been a miracle for me. And that's been the biggest thing. So anybody out there, if you are suffering or struggling with that, I would suggest that you take care of that before you do anything else with your body. You can't get strong and you can't get shredded drinking, every once in a while, maybe, but you have to get that out of your diet. That was one thing that was just constantly holding me back for years and years. But once I got sober and got out of rehab, I went to the gym and I tried to deadlift 315 pounds and I failed on it. And, that was a shocking moment. I had never not been able to deadlift 315. And I was 245 pounds. A couple months earlier, I'd done 550. But just being in rehab and not doing anything and whatever, I missed it. So I was distraught, And I didn't start carnivore until a couple years after that. I've been doing it about a year and a half now, I'd say. So, but I had gone to back to a keto diet and sort of started getting myself back into lifting a little bit. But I only got back into lifting a little bit, right? So since that 315, there wasn't a whole lot of deadlifting going on for a couple years. And then Dr. Baker came here to Super Training and Mark and I were going to interview him. And I said, well, before I interview this guy, let me jump on the carnivore diet. And it's something I had done 25 years ago. I used to eat red meat and water for powerlifting meets. I talked about it on Joe Rogan years ago. 4 years ago, I talked about doing red meat and water diets 20 years ago, right? So we've been experimenting with this stuff for a really long time. It's nothing new. So when Sean was talking about it, I didn't think it was crazy. I was oh, now there's actually a guy that has some information about this. The reason I stopped doing it back then was there was no information out. Everybody told me I was going to die and there was nowhere to turn. Back then, if you looked up a study on cholesterol, you thought you were definitely going to die. there were no people out there like Dave Feldman saying like, no, you might be okay, buddy. Like let's talk about this a little, let's put it in context, right? There was nobody doing that. So of course I stopped doing it. When I came back to it and I started getting on a carnivore diet regularly, one day I came and I just started deadlifting, and I started talking to Stan Efferding about my back. And he's like, you got to start doing some trap bar deadlifts. They'll really help your lower back. You got to start doing these exercises by Dr. Stuart McGill. You got to walk for 10 minutes after every meal.
Trap bar helps a lot just by getting the barbell out of the way of your legs, because when you do a regular deadlift, the barbell's out in front of you. And for many people with mobility issues and things like that, trap bar is just a lot safer.
Yeah. So my deadlift went from doing missing 315 a couple years ago up to like now. What did we do the other day? 635 or something for reps.
Yeah. I mean, you're routinely doing over 500 pounds for reps.
Yeah, and
it's nothing really.
Also able to do over 600 pounds for some reps on a trap bar. On a straight bar, I think what did I pull at your meet? 530. I pulled on a straight bar in a meet, but I was actually like weak that day for some reason. But 530 deadlift from nothing with 2 fake hips, I think is pretty damn good. And actually, like, to be able to feel good is the most important thing. So to say like, hey, and a lot of people will look at me and go, you're crazy. Why do you lift that heavy? You don't need to do that. But it's just something I like. And it's something that gets me out, gets me out of bed in the morning, gets me moving, and I feel good.
What I'm seeing from him is a huge confidence boost too. And then he's just moving better. So everything's getting better. He's able to jump into a workout a little quicker with a little less warm up and things like that, probably due to like inflammation. But I sent you a video yesterday. He might not even know why I sent it to him, but we were doing incline bench in here one day, and I had on like 275 or something like that, or I can't remember the weight. I said, hey, are you in on these incline benches? He's like, I can't do that weight. And I said, that's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you if you can do the weight. I asked you if you're in on the incline bench, because we can adjust the weight. And so,
I felt like an idiot.
He was wandering around like a little bitch, and then, and then we put on an appropriate weight for him, and then he ended up lifting it. But, when we're working out together, it's not necessarily like a competition, although we are brothers. So it's fun to like, try to beat one another here and there. The question isn't, can you lift like somebody else? Can you lift like Sean Baker? Can you do the things that you're doing, walking barefoot on rocks, carrying weights and things like that? That's not the question. The question is, can you perform some of these exercises? It might look different when you do it. It might look different. You might have less weight. But that's what I love about exercise. That's what I love about training, strength training in particular. We can adjust this to anybody. Anybody can come to my gym, and my gym is free, and anybody can come in here on a Saturday or Sunday. If they catch me, they catch me. But that's usually the hardest part. But anyone can come in here and do all the same exercises that I do. They can do everything almost exactly the same. They're just going to use less weight, or maybe they need more rest, or maybe a real beast comes in and uses more weight than me.
Yeah, and I think Mark is right about working. Yeah, we work around a lot of these injuries, and also like working with people. Like Mark recently did a bodybuilding show also, just to sort of show that he can do something like that, which I thought was awesome. And he won his class, and we learned a lot from Mike O'Hearn, who goes back 20 plus years also. Mike O'Tren, as we like to call him. He is over 50, natural bodybuilder, and he's huge. And so what Mike has taught me a lot is like the same thing that Mark taught me: always hop in on the exercise and modify it to what you need to fit your body. So like, hey, my shoulders hurt, so we're going to do this movement a little bit differently than we normally do it. We're going to vary it for you, or we're going to go a little bit lighter. And it's okay to go a little bit lighter than your friends. Just hop in and do it.
Let me tell you something that I took me a long time to realize, is that you should not be in pain when you're exercising. I used to think like, oh, this is par for the course. Same thing with farting. I thought I'm a lifter and I eat a lot of food, so I'm supposed to be farting because I'm trying to consume food all day. Well, pain and farting should not be part of your life, really at all. I mean, it should be minimized drastically. So when you're training, if you have a pain level that's above like a 2 or a 3, you got to think about, how am I going to do this differently to get rid of that pain? Because it's not going to feel any better when you add weight. It's going to feel a lot worse. If you do a lot more reps and you have the same pain level, that's going to cause a lot of irritation. So you need to say to yourself, can I perform this exercise with less weight and reduce the pain? It's kind of make it a lot easier to recover from. I know, I'll tell someone, hey, dumbbell tricep extensions are really great for your bench press, and they can increase punching power, and they can do all kinds of great things for you. But most people can't do them. So like, that shit hurts my elbows. I'm like, okay, well, let's try not to use a 25-pound dumbbell. How about we use a 15-pound dumbbell and maybe do higher reps with less pain? So I had that kind of mindset of almost like no pain, no gain for a long time. And there's a place for that. Pain in your brain, you better figure out how to override that shit. But pain in your body, that's a no-no. You don't want to push on that too hard.
I love it. And I also love the part about farting, because that goes back to my world. Like I used to be a raw vegan. And if people have heard my story, they know that I was a raw vegan about 14 years ago. And I was just Mr. Fart. I was pre-doctor. So I was Paul the Fart Man, but it was pretty bad. I mean,
William said that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, when I was a raw
We
vegan,
hear that a lot.
I farted all the time. And, Michael Greger says that he farts like all the time. And the vegans will say like, oh, get comfortable with your farts. And I mean, from a medical perspective, I think that is completely uncalled for. It's just not true. And one of the things that I've noticed and that other people have noticed on the carnivore diet, I think one of the most striking things is that the gut just becomes so quiescent. It becomes so quiet. There's no more farting. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your partner loves you so much more because you never Dutch oven them. Like you can't even Dutch oven if you want. There's just not a lot of farting, which makes being in movie theaters easier, being in public places easier, being in private places easier. So your life gets so much better just from a farting perspective. But I totally agree about the training as well. Like, we shouldn't be in pain and we should figure it out. But Chris, you've had significant improvement in your pain over the last few years, right? I know that some of that is probably related to like Mind Bullet and things like this, but the carnivore diet maybe played a role in that too?
Yeah, no, I think the carnivore diet is a miracle. And actually, Mind Bullet, it's a Kratom product. A lot of people have seen my movie, A Leaf of Faith, about Kratom. That's been out for quite a while on Netflix. And that has been awesome. I would say Kratom was the catalyst. So Kratom, we market it as Mind Bullet. So Mind Bullet basically is it's a plant from Southeast Asia that basically helps you with pain and inflammation. Also gives you a lot of clarity and focus. So for me, it's like I think for anybody, it's the ultimate pre-workout. Because if you take a pre-workout and it gets rid of like a little bit of aches and pains, and it also gets you fired up and energetic, it just makes you ready to attack.
Puts you in a good mood.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea. And it is a plant, so it might be like out of your league, but which I understand. It's fine. It's like, but I do feel like plants are great medicine. I use CBD oil after I train. Sometimes when we do those heavy deadlifts, it really seems to help in the recovery, like along with the Mind Bullet. So like that's been a factor. But I think that what happened was the Mind Bullet was like the catalyst. Like taking that was the catalyst that was allowed me to get on a carnivore diet. And then like I've been on these diets, like I said, my entire life. But in my core, I was broken. Right? We come from an obese family. Our parents are, they've lost a lot of weight now because we put them on these keto diets and the war on carbs and all that stuff. And we're really proud of them. They've done awesome. But our mindset is fat. Our mindset is the fat kid. And I was always conditioned to, cheat every week. You got to cheat every week. That's just what you do, right?
Yeah, because we really enjoy these foods and now they're cut out of the majority of our life, but let's still keep them around a little bit.
And then when you keep them around, you like way overdo it. You have like 6 candy bars instead of 1 or, whatever, like you just go crazy. So getting the cheats out of my diet, I think a big part of that was started with like the Kratom helping me focus. But then after I was able to focus for a little bit, it's like a snowball effect. Then I got on carnivore, and we hear a lot about carnivore. What happens is over time, you sort of lose all cravings for everything. And that's really fascinating. Like once you get into that zone where you start losing those cravings, it's amazing. And what I've found though, is there's a couple of little things out there that I like that aren't carnivore that I'll have every once in a while. Like there's these keto, Boo keto bars or BHU keto. They're freaking amazing. They're these little chocolate chip cookie dough bars, right? And they sell them at the little store down the street. So I'll go get one of those once in a while. Every time I do that, it's not like that thing does anything to my body composition, but what that thing does to my brain is terrible. It sends me on a path where like now I want fruit. Now I want, I want other things that are sweet. And I just think the more I stay away from those things, if I ever have a choice where I'm like, should I cheat or should I eat something good? Every time I eat the right thing, it just keeps me on the path. And every time I eat the wrong thing, it takes me 2 steps backwards. So it doesn't just take me 1 step backwards, it takes me 2, because there's usually 2 or 3 cheats that come along with that because I can't control myself.
It depends on who we're trying to help or who we're dealing with. But for the most part, when I have people, they'll say, hey, can I have a Zevia? Can I put some stuff in my coffee? They're looking for you're telling them all the foods they can eat, and all the foods they can eat taste delicious. Eggs and meat. I mean, all these things taste really, really good. But as soon as you pull things away from people, now they got a lot of questions. Like, wait, I can't have my pasta. I can't have my popcorn when I'm watching a movie. And the easiest thing, the thing that's worked the best for me in being able to help people has been to tell them, no, you can't have that. Now, we can add things back in as your maturity level grows for diet, as you get more used to your nutrition. But it's like, let's get used to these foods first, and let's teach you that these foods are not only the best for you, they fucking taste really good. They taste fantastic. Let's get our taste buds rewired for a little bit. It might take a while. It might take 60 days. It might take 90 days. And if you keep interrupting it with ice cream and pizza, it could take a few years, which is fine. These things, sometimes they take time. But abstaining from stuff has been where the magic has been. And even fasting. Now, you don't have to do a standard intermittent fasting where you do 16 hours or 20 hours. Those work great, and I highly recommend those. But just don't be so attached to your food. If you ate breakfast in the morning, it's okay to eat again when you come home from work. But you're going to have to try to make it work for you, because what does that look like when you come home from work? Are you exhausted and now you're just going to annihilate everything in your cabinet and stuff like that? Maybe it would be wise for you to have a little snack, have a piece of cheese or some salami or something, have some sort of, if you're on the carnivore diet, have maybe some fish or something as a kind of mild snack so that when you go home, you don't go bonkers. But I've noticed that the fasting has helped a lot too, because it helps to lean into the cravings of the foods that you're supposed to be eating.
I couldn't agree more. I think that for most people, the cheat days, all this kind of stuff is just causing a problem. It's interrupting sort of the immunologic processes. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but if it fits your macros, then you can do a cheat day, but there's no cheating the immune system. And this gets into kind of granular medical stuff, but you can't cheat the immune system. And the immune system has a memory that's much longer than your metabolism. And what I'm seeing for people on carnivore diets is that the magic starts to happen at day 30. And some people feel better in the first week or the first few days, but some of the sickest people, it takes 30 solid days, no cheats, to feel better. And so the immune system has a longer memory than the metabolism and your metabolic processes, your hormones. And I agree with you, Chris, that the mental side is so strong here. And I think that this is part of the physiology too. I think this is probably an inflammatory thing, that when people cheat, they're setting up this cascade of unfortunate dominoes whereby they're more insulin resistant, they get more cravings, and by not cheating, like what you're saying, Mark, by even fasting or separating yourself from your connection with food, people start to break that connection, and then the vicious cycle stops. But if people are doing a cheat day every week, I really think it gets in the way of their progress. I generally recommend, just like you're saying, Mark, I say, let's start simple and then build back up. But I want them to have a period of 30 or 60 days with no cheating. And I think that they do much better that way. We hear this all the time on the carnivore diet relative to keto, relative to other things like even paleo, that the cravings are just so much less and it's so much easier, probably because we're not introducing those kind of Pandora's box foods that just set everything all a mess, and it really messes up all of our brain wiring and satiety and stuff. So I think that is a really important point to make.
Yeah.
I think you can think about it too, like, how would we get these type of foods in nature on a normal basis? So something like pizza, which has a great fat and carbohydrate combo, or a donut, ice cream, even juice, even just like orange juice or something like that. I don't think these things are going to kill you. I don't think they're super harmful, but obviously the higher the dose that we get into, the more lethal they can be, because they can cause diabetes and things like that. But I do think there's room to be social. There's room for wine. There's room for some stuff, but you got to get some sort of control first. And I think a great place to start is, what's going to be like the least insulting to my body? Like if I do want to cheat, like for me, I have a sweet tooth. What is something that you could possibly do that we can all agree on? Like, hey dude, you know what? That ain't that bad. Like compared to what you were doing, that ain't that bad.
Right.
But we do need to string together a lot of days in a row in order to get to where we want to go. But maybe at night, maybe you could have some strawberries with like heavy cream on it or something like that. Maybe there's something that you can do where you're like, this is way less offensive than what I was doing before. And this is still stuff that appears in nature. This is fruit has cofactors, and it's got potassium. It has fiber. It has things that help you digest it.
Don't talk to me about fiber, Mark. You know about fiber.
There's not really a whole lot of things that are in ice cream that are going to help you deal with the carbohydrate load that you're going to get from that,
No, I really like that point. As people are transitioning into the diet and just looking to improve their health in general, I love that question that you just posed. Does it appear in nature? And if it does appear in nature, then it's probably a better place to do, to use. It's a better place to start with foods that might not be on your on your tier 1 plan, quote unquote, or something. But, if you really need something to kind of get you through, does it appear in nature? Okay. A chocolate bar doesn't really appear in nature. McBlizzard doesn't really appear in nature. Strawberry, yeah, it appears in nature. Honey, yeah, it appears in nature. Donuts, I don't know. There's not many donut plants in this part of the world, but
donut tree.
My experience with carbohydrates has been really interesting. And I'll say like, hey, I'm going to add in some carbs. And then every time I've done it so far, I go back to carnivore. So I'll tell you why. Usually, like I said, it leads to other things. That's usually the main problem. I've added in some rice here and there. Rice seems to be the one thing that I can deal with. That's been okay. And I don't know if it's necessarily helped my strength. It actually, like, I like it. It helps me eat. Rice and meat together tastes great. Mm-hmm. So we had some sushi the other day. That was great. But when I say I add it in, it's like maybe once every 3 weeks or something. Like, it's not.
It might be not like a lot. 100 grams of carbs or something.
Yeah,
too, right? It's not a lot.
It's not a whole lot, and it's like once in a while. But a couple days ago, I had 3 pieces of fruit in one day, 2 apples and an orange, and over the course of a day, and I felt like my stomach was going to explode. I felt awful. And I was the one talking on Joe Rogan about like, yeah, I eat some fruit here and there and I do a carnivore diet. But when I say here and there, I really do mean like you could probably have like a piece of fruit a day. And then I think like after that, it starts affecting like stomach acid or something. I mean, my stomach felt like it was going to explode, and that might be, just me. I don't know.
It could also potentially be from just not eating it. Maybe you're not used to it anymore. Like I know that Rob Wolf has seen that with a lot of people he's worked with, especially military people. They go out and they travel, and he's got to prepare them for gluten because of what they get fed and what the options of food that they have. And so he'll put them on a routine where he's like specifically getting them gluten back into their diet because they starved away from it for a long time. Now they don't have the enzymes to deal with it or however it works. But I think the same thing is true. I liked when Andy Galpin was on my podcast and he talked about, being able to be a little flexible. Like for me, it's really important. Like I'm a family guy and I love to be able to enjoy moments with my family. I love to be able to enjoy moments with my team here at Slingshot and stuff like that. Doesn't mean I have to go out and eat like an asshole, but maybe occasionally we do go like a pizza place and I'm not the only guy that's not eating, maybe occasionally we do some things, but I also am somebody that I really like to work for. I like to work for it. I like to work towards those things. And I'm trying to get like a 90, 95 on everything all the time because I want to do that for the span of my life. I feel like if I was to try to put 100 in, that I might crash and burn. If I put 100% into my business, 100% into my family, 100% into my food, then I'm choking off like all desires all the time. And it's like, fuck, man, that doesn't seem like a great lifestyle. Even when I'm fasting, it kind of drives me crazy sometimes. 'Cause I'm like, man, like I do a lot of things right. I work really hard. Like this is sometimes killing me. And so I'll recommend to people like, hey, do some fasting sometimes and sometimes don't. Sometimes wake up and be pumped to eat some breakfast.
Yeah.
Mark texted me one time and he says, it's ridiculous that I diet every day, I train every day, and I have to do this just so I don't get love handles. And that's genetics, you know, and I think that that's something like a lot of people don't discuss is like Mark and I, genetically, we are blessed with strength. You know, we've always been strong. That day that Mark benched 240, I think my mom put up 135 and she never lifted a weight in her life. So she just grabbed the bar and like threw up a plate, you know, I could do this, boom, you know. And so we were
all uncoordinated and everything, but she still did it.
Yeah, genetically geared towards having strength. I remember somebody, when my dad dropped me off for school one day and one of my friends said, what does your dad do for a living? Kick bowling balls? Because my dad's calves are as big as mine are. And that's, you know, that's genetics. That's not something that I worked for or worked at, you know. And I think a lot of people have genetics to be lean, you know, and to be in shape. And it's harder for us, I think, at this point and also at our age. So while we may have to just eat meat in order to be like as lean as possible, there's other people that can get away with like a lot more. And then there's a lot of people that are way worse off than we are, you know? And so I think like we have to understand, you know, our genetics and then like also the epigenetics, like what did we make ourselves into? What have we, and that's why when we say everybody's different, that's what it really breaks down to is like all the stuff we've been pouring in over the years is probably what made us different and react different to different things. So I think like we have to take into account our genetics and like where everybody starts too, because when you prescribe this to people, some people can eat as much as they want and get shredded. And some people need to fast a little bit and some people need to cut their calories and some people need to manipulate their calories. So that's where it gets difficult is like I've found is, you know, prescribing across the board for everyone. I think there's different ways of doing it depending on where you're at and what your genetics are.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things that I admire about both of you guys is this concept of mental flexibility and the idea. I think when I was on the podcast with you, Mark, many, many moons ago, the first time that we were on the podcast, we talked about this concept of like solving for the highest quality of life at every moment. And it's been something that I keep coming back to for people, the idea that, you know, even though I'm pretty intense about the carnivore diet, I don't think everybody needs to be. And what I tell people is just solve for the highest quality of life at every moment. When you go out to pizza with your team, the highest quality of life right then is eating pizza with them. Or, you know, it's your wife's birthday and she wants you want to have birthday cake, you freaking do it, you know? And we just kind of, you know, that's all that I'm trying to do. I think that's what everybody in this space who has a good heart is trying to do, is to help people have the best quality of life. And if somebody's best quality of life is eating donuts all day, well, I mean, who am I to judge that, you know? But if somebody wants to get shredded and jacked and tan, or they want to feel better, or they want their joints to ache less, then that quality of life, you know, supersedes whatever was before it, and they can kind of prioritize their decisions based on that. But I really like the way you guys sort of exemplify this for me and for the community of like mental flexibility, you know, psychological, philosophical flexibility, saying, hey, you know, we don't have to do this all the time. Let's understand what each piece of this has for us, what values all this has. And I think people can kind of incorporate it into their life there. But I love that the carnivore diet is sort of like this tool if people want to use it. You know, it's like you walk into your garage and you've got the hammer, you've got the nail gun, you've got, you've got the drill, and it's like, oh, today I just need to drill. I just need to drill, you know, I want the carnivore diet tool and it's going to help me achieve these things. But the next day it's the hammer. And so I really appreciate that.
On the flip side of what you're saying, Mark and I often use this as an opportunity to help people, right? Like not on purpose. It just happens. We're not trying to be evangelical or anything. But I remember Mark, Andrew, and I were in the airport and we just ordered steak on a plate at the Hard Rock Cafe. The lady's like, steak on a plate? Yeah, just give us a steak on a plate, nothing else, you know. And then she asks about it, right? And she had some weight to lose and she got all fascinated. But you guys just eat meat? That's all you do? Like, well, yeah, we had just started on it, you know? So it was an opportunity to share some information. I think Mark had his War on Carbs book, and I think he handed her one. You know, and it's like, we may have changed. We don't know. We may have changed that woman's life though. Like she never knew about it. Now she knows about it. Now we're open to it. It's like, we don't have to go out and like be preaching this to everybody. But when somebody does stop and ask, like, why are you just eating a steak? Like, where's your side orders? It's a good opportunity to like really influence somebody's health and really influence somebody's life. And I think that's important.
I gotta be, honest. Like I'm getting sick and tired of people saying like there's no magic diet, and I'm also very frustrated with people saying there's not like a one size fits all diet. I think that's an excuse. That's an excuse that people use so they can guard themselves away from not losing weight. Losing weight is very simple. Diet is very simple. It's not easy. It's hard. It's difficult because it's a constant battle against your brain and your mind because we've been intoxicated with so much junk food over the years. But if you were to tell somebody, hey, you know what, for the next 60 days, like if you could feed somebody the way that you feed your dog and you just gave them a couple servings of steak every day, along with maybe some things to kind of fill in some of their nutrient demands, they would lose weight. Every single person.
Yeah, it's almost like, let me feed you.
Now, look, if you had 1,000 people, yeah, of course, there could be a few outliers in there, right? There could be a few people for whatever reason, their metabolism or something is jacked up. They got some sort of condition, and maybe they have a hard time. But if you put America on a diet and just said all you can eat is meat, the diet will end up self-regulating itself too. People talking about calories in, calories out. If I tell a 400-pound person you can eat as much meat as you want, well, they're going to eat a lot. Probably, if they're used to eating a lot and they got a good appetite, they will probably eat a lot of meat, and they probably won't lose any weight in the beginning. But how many days in a row are they going to eat 10 pounds of meat or 6 pounds of meat or whatever it would be? It's going to self-regulate itself after a while. And on top of that, how convenient is the diet? It's not very convenient. So you're going to end up utilizing intermittent fasting indirectly, unless you're walking around with hamburgers in your pocket all day long. So this, whether this diet works or not is definitely not something that should even be questioned anymore.
Also, like we should say, Mark and I have a guy, Big Block, shout out to Big Block. He's following us, and he started a carnivore diet, 734 pounds.
Oh my God.
6'7", big dude. And, he's down to like 5 something now. He's in his 5s now. But he's dropping, and it's like he won't cheat. He won't, like, even sometimes, like, he's like, yeah, man, people keep coming to work with pizza. I feel like cheating. I'm like, well, if you have to have whatever, do it, but just go right back on. And then he always texts me, and I'm always so proud of him because, like, I didn't cheat. I didn't do it. I'm like, well, good. But like, if you need to, just do it. But what I love is helping all these people that have had such crazy, he said he couldn't lose weight because everything on keto tasted too good. And so when we put him on meat, he's like, I love meat and it's great, but I can only eat so much, and I get to a point where I'm full. So you have this guy who's like 700 pounds. Now he's 500 something pounds. So he's 500 something pounds and he can't eat that much. He can only eat like twice a day. And even when he eats twice a day, it's like maybe 1.5 pounds of steak. It's basically like the same amount of food that I'm eating. So what do you think is going to happen to this guy over time if he can sustain the diet? Now that's the tough thing. Like, can he sustain it? Will he break down? We don't really know, and we can't really tell that. But those are the things that I find really interesting, is like, he is on a regimen. He is now to the point where he has self-regulated his own food intake. And if he doesn't cheat, if he doesn't add any carbs or things that are going to make that hyper palatable to the mix, he's probably going to be okay.
When I did my bodybuilding show, I spent hours and hours and hours on meal preparation, cardio training, 90 minutes a day towards the end. It was usually routinely like 45 minutes throughout most of the prep. But I had 6 or 7 meals every single day. It was flip-flop back and forth between fish, chicken, and steak. Fish, chicken, steak, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I could have some eggs here and there, oatmeal. The carbohydrates were not a problem for me. I tend to digest them well, and the diet worked out great in terms of energy, in terms of holding on to muscle mass. The reason why I even did a bodybuilding show in the first place is because Hani Rambad came on my podcast, and he's like, you're already in pretty good shape. He's like, you should do a bodybuilding show. Well, having someone who's trained so many champions tell you that, I'm going to invest in listening to everything that he says. So I'm like, I'm not going to cheat or do anything off the plan. I'm just going to do exactly what he says. And I did. And it worked. And it worked great. And it was the best shape I've ever been in, the leanest I've ever been in. Now, on the other hand, through utilizing a carnivore diet, which I would say that when it came to the bodybuilding diet and it came to like the extra exercises and stuff like that, I was probably 9.8 on a scale of 1 to 10. With a carnivore diet, even just being at like an 8 to a 9, if I'm being fair to myself, because I cheat here and there. I have chocolate and I got some different things in my back pocket here and there. Utilizing carnivore diet in that way, I got to the same body weight, not quite as lean. If I was probably being honest with myself, I'd say maybe the body fat percentage might be off by maybe like 2% or something like that. But the amount of time invested in it is hardly anything. It's a couple minutes to cook up some meat, and it's a couple of minutes to eat the meat. And I only eat like twice or sometimes 3 times a day, somewhere in that range. So it doesn't take me any extra time. We've been in communication, and he'll always be a good friend of ours. We differ on some things here and there, but Lane Norton, has recently talked about getting out of shape. And he's like, sometimes you get out of shape because you get so busy. And we're like, well, why don't you just try like a keto style diet,
Carnivore,
or a carnivore diet where you don't have to invest all this time, right? Because time is not an excuse for anybody to get out of shape. Now, there are things that happen in people's lives. Lane went through a divorce, and there's things like that happen in your life where we can all kind of agree, like, okay, dude, that sucks. Okay, we get it. That's very stressful, and that might make sense. You're going to waver on something in your life.
He just got engaged yesterday. So first of all, congratulations, Lane and Holly. And then second of all, to get shredded for the wedding, maybe we can get him on a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
That would be. You guys both know that nothing would make me happier.
Come on, buddy.
Well, the other thing I'll say too, though, is that Lane is still performing at a really high level.
Yeah, he's strong as shit.
So he's coming back with a vengeance with his strength, which is really cool to see. But as a leader and as somebody talking about nutrition, you want to see the guy sliced up. So I'm hoping that he can get back in shape. But the main point is that time is not an excuse for anybody, because now we have a diet where, in my opinion, I'm not really devoting a lot of extra time. People talk about cost as well, but if you're only eating 2 or 3 times a day, this is not going to be that costly of a diet.
The other day I went to Walmart and I posted this on my Instagram. I found a 10-pound tube of ground beef for $20.
Woo!
I mean, like, where can, it's like,
who's winning? Who's winning?
But, well, I didn't even buy it because I don't know what the hell to do with a 10-pound tube of beef. But I know basically, like, if you had no money, what you do is you take that 10-pound tube home and you cut it up into, pieces, and you throw it in your freezer. And then you take out a little bit each, couple days and cook it. And that's how you live. So we actually have a guy here that works in Mark's store that was telling me that he was eating pork because beef was too expensive and he doesn't make enough money. So I just said, hey, go to Walmart, get that beef. And he did it. And now he feels great. He just said, hey, I feel so much better just eating a $2 ground beef,
Man, so many great things. So, yeah, and I think this kind of actually brings us back full circle a little bit to the nose to tail idea that, like, I love what you guys are saying here. And I think this is kind of Sean's message and part of the carnivore diet is that we can have like the super simple carnivore diet, and it can be just eat meat, man. It's going to be simple. You're going to get healthier. You're going to lose weight. And then, I'm on the other end of the spectrum saying, yeah, just eat meat. And then we're going to fill in all the micronutrients, with like the geeky side. So I think it can appeal to everyone along the spectrum. And there's a way to eat this in this fashion that can benefit and be used by all people. I don't mean to overcomplicate it in my, social media platforms. And so I think this is the awesome thing about what Sean is doing is just saying, hey, and like, like you said in those examples, Mark, like just make it easy for people. And for some people, that's going to help them in the best way. And I couldn't agree with that more. And what you were saying, Chris, I love this idea. And I was reminded of what Mark just said. Like, if it doesn't occur in nature, for your friend, like if it doesn't occur in nature, don't eat it, why are we doing that? Yeah. So it's such a cool thing. And it's really, I love the points that you guys are highlighting there.
For me, more recently, my diet has been like I eat a lot of meat, and I think I love Dr. Baker's message of meat heals, and I think that's a great place for people to start. So try to add to your day, try to add to your life. Try to add in some walks, try to add in some meat. And then you'll eventually have to start subtracting. You can't eat red meat and donuts, right? So you'll have to figure out a balance, and you'll have to figure out how to bring some of these things in. But for me, more recently, I've been eating a lot of red meat. I have liverwurst as your recommendation, and
Nice.
I got Brunkschweier or whatever that stuff's called. That's like heart and liver and stuff. It tastes really good. I get it from U.S. Wellness Meats. I just put it in my fridge. It lasts quite a bit of time in there. I put it on top of my burgers, or I cook it up in an omelet. To me, it tastes really good. Maybe to somebody else, maybe they don't enjoy that. But even as a supplement, you can just eat it rather than trying to mix it. If you don't enjoy it, then don't mix it in with anything else. Just have a few chunks of it here and there. But I eat a lot of meat, and then I'll have a potato. Just I kind of do things like just when they get in the way. So same thing with vegetables. If I go to a restaurant and they're kind of picky about what they serve and how they serve it, I'll just order whatever the hell comes. Like I'll just eat it. For me, it's something that's a filler, and I don't mind eating it. I've never noticed anything negative per se. Maybe something negative is happening, but I don't notice a reaction to it. And I'll eat a potato or some rice, things like that, on a weekly basis, 2 or 3 times. I'll have some fruit every once in a while. And then I love dairy. So I'll have cheese here and there. I'll have yogurt here and there, and whey protein. I usually actually mix whey protein into yogurt every night. That's kind of my fat boy sweet tooth sign off for the night as I watch TV with my wife. And that's how I live my life every day. And I'm super excited about everything that I eat every day. I'm excited for lunch. I'm excited for dinner. I'm excited for that snack before I go to bed. And it's been working really well. I'm in some of the best shape of my life.
Yeah. We've added in, sort of a couple things that you've suggested. Like I have collagen every day. I make sure that I get in collagen.
I do the same, yep.
I use a couple of sources of collagen. Like I like Mark Sisson's Primal Kitchen collagen fuel. It does have coconut in it. There might be some stuff in there that you find that may be bad. I'm not really sure, but we should talk about that. Seems it has inulin in it, I think, which may be a problem, right?
Could be. That wouldn't be my favorite. That's one of those prebiotic starches. We can talk about it.
Better just go with like a plain collagen, most likely.
Yeah.
My problem is like the same thing, like mental.
If you're having one serving of it a day, though, how bad? Like if you don't feel anything,
that's kind of the way I look at it. Is like
I don't really sweat it too much.
Either I like the shake, or I dread drinking like a plain collagen shake, or like putting it on my meat like you do. I haven't tried that yet, but I guess I have to try that first before I say that it's gross. But yeah, I'll look into some of that stuff. But basically that's what I did. And I added in, I can't find salmon roe anywhere, like in my area. I haven't been able to find it actually. I haven't gone to like a Japanese.
Yeah. Where do you get it from?
I get it online. There's a couple of places. There's like a fishing company here in Seattle that'll ship, or Vital Choice will do it. So
I've been kind of lazy about doing
Is
that.
it real salty, or what is it like? I've only had it at restaurants before, I think.
It's kind of salty. Yeah. I think they cure it. They kind of save it in salt. Yeah.
Right. Can you so what do you take, like a tablespoon of that, teaspoon of that?
About a tablespoon a day. Yeah.
And you just down it?
I just down it. Yeah. But I mean, that's just how I do it. I'm kind of an alien. Like
it tastes kind of gross and you just get over it.
I like the taste a lot, actually. I posted on Instagram this morning. My breakfast was, a couple of ribeyes with egg yolks and salmon roe and bone marrow all kind of mixed together.
What are you getting out of the salmon roe exactly?
The salmon roe is it's twofold. It's an iodine source. So I think a lot of people need to think about where they're getting iodine from. If they're just eating muscle meat, not a lot of iodine in muscle meat. So you're getting iodine, and you're also getting a little more omega-3 in like a phospholipid form. And the phospholipid form of the DHA crosses the blood-brain barrier, at least in rodent experiments. It's been shown to cross the blood-brain.
I've been using krill oil from Perfect Keto. I don't know if that's a good source.
I think that's a pretty good source. I like the Perfect Keto brand. And
I love Anthony Gustin's a great guy, and he's really smart, and he's really dedicated to high-quality, good stuff. So I really like what he's doing.
I'm actually going to be hanging out with him next week. I'm going to be in Austin for Paleo FX. And
yeah, he's the man. I love Anthony.
Be hanging out with Anthony.
He sends me loads of all his stuff, and all the stuff they make is good.
Do you order bone marrow online as well?
No, I just go to the store down the street, which has
Oh, just got it.
marrow bones. Yeah. But I mean, there
How's
are
that
companies.
taste? Is that okay?
What's that?
Does it taste okay?
I love it, man. Well, when I come to Sacramento, we'll have to get down. Like, I'll give you guys all the tours, the things. I just eat it raw.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I mean, it's basically butter. I really feel like the way that you use butter, whether you want to like melt it on a steak or something, you can use bone marrow in the same
Okay.
way.
I'll
Yeah,
give it a.
Paul, you know what I miss more than anything in this country? Butcher shops.
I
They've all,
know.
they've all disappeared.
Yeah, there's not that many.
I've
There's
been
one in
looking-
Sacramento that's really good.
Yeah,
Though.
I've been looking around for butcher shops, and a lot of times you can find like these Mexican markets. I guess they have really good meat, and they
That
have.
sounded racist.
Yeah, I know it sounds racist. It's not. Don't worry, Andrew's here. But you know, like the Mexican meat market.
Carniceria.
Yeah. Those seem to be around, but other than that, man, we've really lost those butcher shops, and it's hard to find a lot of good animal products. And you go to the supermarkets now, and the butcher shops are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, like the butcher sections. You go to Erewhon in Venice, California, they don't even have one. Their meat section is like this big. I swear to God, in the whole damn store, it's like
I've been to it.
that big.
I've been to
And
that arrow one.
It's kind of funny, and
They sell the top of everything except for meat.
well, and then you walk into the aisle that has yogurt, and they have like 8,000 different SKUs of yogurt. They got like every vegetable you can possibly imagine, right?
Yeah, and just like Whole Foods, the place is full of junk.
I agree.
It's a glorified fake healthy junk food store. You know, that's what it is.
I couldn't agree more. And sometimes people ask me like, what do you get when you eat? And I think if I were gonna go one place to shop, it would be a butcher shop, because I can be like, hey, I want liver, I want heart, I want bone marrow, I want some extra animal fat, I want some tendon, and that's the only kind of place. I want some back fat, some suet, some steaks. That's what we need to get back to.
If you end up in LA, there is a place called a Cut Above butcher shop that I found. It took me a lot of searching, but I'm gonna have to go check out his butcher shop too up here. But
Yeah, there's a place up here that's pretty sick.
it's great. Like I went in and they have they make their own beef tallow, they make their own bone broth, and that's another thing that I added in too. Is I really like bone broth. I know that has some vegetables in it. It's really hard to find. The one that I got from the butcher shop didn't have any vegetables in it, but for the most part, any kind of brand that you buy on the market's gonna have some. So I use Kettle and Fire. I think that's pretty good. It doesn't seem to upset anything or throw anything off yet. So I like doing that maybe like once a day. And I think actually I'm going to start replacing my coffee with something like bone broth, because I've been having issues.
Tastes pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good sub. Chris, have you included liver?
Yeah, just a little bit of like liverwurst. Not actual liver yet. And I actually we were gonna buy those
Liver bites
from Epic. I'm not sure how those are, but those look like they might be pretty good.
It's a good way to start. When I'm down in Sacramento in June, we'll all hang out and I'll see if I can convince you guys to eat some like raw liver with me. I swear. It's
I'll totally do it. I have no problem. Yeah, I have a
Mindful
problem
buzz.
like finding it and sourcing it, and then like how do I eat it, and like
just knowledge.
If I'm with you, I'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll try it, and see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A lot of this stuff is just daunting to dive into on your own,
It is.
Somebody shows you the way, then it's a lot easier, and that's why Mark and I really like showing people the way, because usually it's pretty easy,
And yeah, it's just, one of the cool things is that I think we're all astronauts in this field, or pirates. We're all just sort of out there exploring and saying, hey, this worked, this didn't. And it's super fun to come back to Earth and say, this is what I found in space, you guys. It's really cool out there. You should check it out. And
I have a good question for you. I've been on this carnivore diet for a long time. I've made some really drastic changes in my physique and in my performance. But I'm not quite there yet where I want to be. Like I haven't gotten like totally shredded. I still have some lower body fat, belly fat I'm trying to get rid of. I'm sort of at my wit's end. I think like maybe fasting might be sort of the only way out of that thing. Is that what you would recommend maybe?
I think so. I think that if you're really, and this is kind of a buzzword and I don't want to misuse it, but if you really want autophagy, the way to do that is with fasting or intermittent fasting, time restricted eating. So, people have talked about this. You could even, I could walk you through a 48-hour fast or some intermittent 72-hour fast or a 24 or just some time restricted eating, I think you're going to see real improvements in terms of like loose skin and just a little bit, just that last little bit, I think you'll get rid of it with the autophagy. That's kind of the benefit of that, is if you weave in that fasting component, whether it's time restricted eating or a longer fast, I think that's going to be the key.
I wish they could just like knock me out for a couple of days and I'll just fast.
I think you can also, there's so many ways you can fast. You can fast like every other day. I did for a few weeks, I did some fasting, and every other day I would do like a liquid fast. I just kept the calories below 500, which is way different. And maybe you're not going to see the same results from autophagy, but being a big guy that has a lot of weight to carry around, I was like, well, if I just fast every day, that might be pretty extreme for me. And I might start to accumulate some hunger, which is really weird, because if you just purely fast, then you actually don't accumulate hunger. But I was utilizing intermittent fasting. So
yeah,
there's a bunch of ways you can try it. You can say, you know what, I'm just going to screw myself over and I'm going to do a 3-day or a 2-day fast, and you can go for it. And those are actually pretty easy. I've done a 48-hour fast before. And as soon as the day's over, the second day, you're not even really thinking about food. Like the thought of trying to eat seems like it almost costs too much energy. You're like, I don't want anything to do with food. But if you're doing intermittent fasting, I would advise a good place to start would be maybe every other day.
No, I love it. I love it. You guys, I love this. We could keep going. I want to respect your time. I've got to run.
Yeah, no problem, man.
I will see you guys soon, but tell people where they can find you guys. I mean, people already probably know where you guys are because you're Insta famous and you're jacked and tan, but tell people where they can find you.
I'm at Big Strong Fast, and then you can also get our product at Mind Bullet.
Okay. And that's on Instagram.
Yeah. At mind_bullet, actually.
And, mindbullet.com. And we have sample packs. We ship them out, just a $5 shipping charge. So if you just want to try them out, you want to experiment with it, that's a great place to go. It's a great pre-workout. We take it for aches and pains as well. And then this shirt will be available. I'm not sure when this drops, but this shirt will be available this Tuesday. And that's at markbellslingshot.com. So thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, we love what you're doing.
It's really cool to see the impact that our podcast has had. So many people saw the podcast that we did with you and Lane Norton, and Lane is still probably bandaged up, and he's still looking a little rough from that fight there. But that was a lot of fun, and it brought a lot of attention to Carnivore, and I'm really happy that it brought a lot of attention to you. And it looks like you're just on an upward trend over there. So really cool.
We're really proud to have been to know you and be in with you and have done, put out your work.
The Salad Man.
We're sort of the first guys to kind of do it. So yeah, that excites me to be able, as soon as I met you, I knew that you had to be on Mark's podcast and you had to deliver this message to the world. So I'm glad that we could be a big part of that.
Well, you guys were the beginning of that. So I owe so much to you guys. And I remember, Mark, after the first podcast that we did, you were talking to Andrew, and Andrew said, we had him here first. And you guys did. Like, Mark Bell's Power Project is where it all started. And the debate with Lane was awesome. And I'm totally grateful for Lane coming on and doing that with me. And I learned a lot talking to him. And I'm sure that he and I will talk more in the future. And hopefully he and I will collaborate. And I would certainly help him with a carnivore diet if he wanted to do that. He put this great study out the other day. He like referenced this great study on Instagram showing that when they compared animal protein and plant protein, there was no difference in inflammation.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, go Lane. So
I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I'm like, wait, he's on our side?
I think he's always been on our side, but he's just such a smart scientific guy that he wants to just make sure people are thinking about it from a reasonable sense.
That's what I like. He doesn't let anybody go too far over the edge. It's like, hold on right there, stop, and then brings it back, reels it back a little bit. There is a lot of people out there spreading a lot of misinformation just because they're overly excited or overzealous.
Yeah. So I think he's an asset. Absolutely. So you guys, I love you. I will see you soon.
All right,
Have a great
brother.
rest of
Thank you so much. Appreciate
it. All
it.
right.